Welcome back. This is Michael T. Shue with Michael T. Shue Studios again. Back to making our pin here. And you can see that I've glued the tube in and we've got it set back from the ends nicely. Now normally what I would do, and I'm going to do it here just as a demonstration, although I don't need to do it this time, I don't believe. Normally I retrue the blanks at this point. I put them between the live and dead center, snug them up, and I retrue the outside of the blank. And I do this because if the hole that you've drilled through your blank is not perfectly parallel with the sides, you run into some bad problems when you use a cullet chuck to do this process. If you're on a mandrel, it's not quite as crucial, but you know, this is the method that I use. So I'm going to actually go ahead and true this up, knock the glue off the outside, and we will take it from there.
This is the hour, the darkest place. Dante's Inferno, the devil's maze. It's a good world, good world gone bad.
Again, I'm using my 1-inch skew here. Probably need to touch up the blade, but for this process, shouldn't be an issue. Definitely need to touch up that skew. Now the blank has been retrued, all the glue has been removed from the outside of the blank. So the next step is to switch my cullets here, take out my dead center, and we're going to go back to having the blank directly in the chuck. Now this is one of those techniques that I mentioned that I do that's different from what other people do. Because now what we're going to do is we're going to trim the end of the blank. Now most people would just use a either a sanding disc or a barrel trimmer or something along those lines to nibble this down. I actually do everything pretty much on the lathe. So this, you know, by putting it in the cullet chuck, this is centered. We can actually turn it on and watch that the hole is still centered. See, it rotates truly. And now I'm going to use a skew or my diamond gouge to take the end off and down to the brass and just barely touch the brass.
State of affairs. Half the people dying while the rest of us are splitting hairs. It's a good world gone bad.
See, brought it down just to the brass, and I angled this in ever so slightly just to make it slightly concave so that when I put the bushing in, it actually meets the material before it meets the end of the tube. And I do that simply because, one, it prevents you from taking a little bit too much off the end of the tube and hurting yourself, and also because it provides you a much tighter fit and finish on your finished pen if you have a slight taper there. Not much, just a half a millimeter or so. Now I'll swap around. And do the other end. I think that just about does it for truing it up. Now, if I had, if the ends of this had not been, fairly even with the blank when I started this process, when I put it between centers earlier, it could still make the blank go skew as go at an angle as I was turning it true, and that would have caused the bushings not to meet up properly. But now I'm going to show you, I'm actually going to have to clean this tube out because I've got a little bit of glue and paint in these tubes. Nothing to worry about, but we'll go ahead and take care of that. And then once I've got it cleaned out, it will be time to actually check the fit of the bushings. And I'll show you the two different types of bushings that are out on the market and what the benefits are to both of them. Okay. Two tools that you should have on hand. This is actually a file for sharpening your chainsaw blades, and actually it works really well at just getting in here and taking out any glue, paint, and whatnot that may be stuck in the tube. Just run it through, blow it out, and you're done. The other thing is something to ease the edges on the end of the tube. There's different versions of this little tool that are out there. This one comes in real handy. It just takes 2 seconds to knock off that edge, prevent any burrs from catching on the bushings. Okay, so now we're going to look at the bushings. This bushing is actually specifically designed for turning between centers. You'll notice that it has a longer portion that inserts into the tube. The backside has a 60-degree tapered hole in it instead of a through hole, and that matches with your live center and dead center. And these are made out of steel and machined from solid steel so that they are much more accurate in terms of their outside dimensions, inside dimensions. When you put these into a pen, most of the time when you pull them out, they'll actually make a popping noise. They're that tight of a tolerance. This is a standard bushing. It has a through hole all the way through it. It's flat on the backside. These are usually they're machined or cast. I honestly don't know. They're made out of a softer metal, so you can wear these away fairly quickly if you're not careful. The portion that goes inside the tube is usually only about 1/4 inch, so it doesn't seat real well if you're not careful. And typically these will have a little bit more slop in them in terms of the tolerances that they have. The other thing is this hole sometimes is not concentric with the outside portions of the bushing, so that can give you a problem where your pen blank will wind up out of concentricity, however you say that word. and one side of your pin will be flush with the hardware, the other side will be proud of the hardware, or you could even have a situation where it's flush with the hardware and under the hardware on the other side, which is the worst situation that you can have. But this particular set that I have for the bullet pin that I'm making, they're actually in pretty good shape for both of them. Now, when you put these in place, before you put it in your on your lathe, look at the end. Forgive me for my fingers, I've got bandages and everything on them. Look at the end right here. Look all the way around the end of the tube where the bushing mates to it. You want to look and make sure that there are no gaps with no pressure on this bushing. No gaps. Everything sits tight and flush. Put your finger on it, move it around, make sure that everything stays tight and flush. The reason that you're doing that is to ensure that when you trim the blank, that everything lines up smoothly, so that, again, when you're turning, everything comes out right. If there is a gap on one side and not on the other, when you put it in the lathe and put pressure on it, that gap may disappear, but it actually may be flexing the pin and cause you to have a problem where the blank does not come out fully round. So you want to take care and look at those little items whenever you're doing the pin. Okay, so now I'm going to actually switch back to my dead center and live center, and we'll put this back on the lathe, and we will finish turning the spin.